Consumer spending is on the rebound, and that's good, of course, but consumers are spending and thinking differently from how they did before the pandemic. So what might these changes mean for the economy and the markets long term? It's that time again, time to tune out the hype and focus on the facts. Facts that matter to you, the income generation. Let's get started. Get ready to separate reality from myth.
Joining me right now is Sound Income Strategies founder and CEO David Scranton.
They've created a new type of inflation, and although markets have always been an emotional place, they seem to be even more of an emotional place these days.
Jeffrey Small, market watcher, is with me.
Stock market dynamic is getting ready to significantly change.
So let's bring in our co-host, Jeff Small, president of Arbor Financial Services, and also the brand ambassador for the Retirement Income Store. We've been talking a lot about the, quote, new normal that's taking shape as our country reopens and recovers from the coronavirus crisis. A big part of that new normal involves consumers and how they've adapted to the restrictions and the realities of the pandemic. From more shopping online to less shopping overall, Americans have made some dramatic changes in their spending habits and in their attitudes about discretionary spending specifically. In fact, analysts believe that some of these changes are here to stay, and that in order to accommodate them, businesses will have to make some changes of their own or they'll get left behind. So what does all this mean for the economy and the financial markets going forward? What might it mean for your retirement plan? We'll answer those questions and many more on today's show. And joining me to talk about what the government is doing to prepare for the new communications needs emerging for consumers and businesses is FCC Commissioner Michael O'Reilly. Also joining me, as usual, is my friend and co-host, Jeff Small. So right now, let's take a closer look at some of the ways in which the coronavirus crisis has changed how American consumers are spending their money. Picking up groceries, Christmas shopping, picking out new furniture. Before COVID-19, these were things we all did in crowded stores without even thinking about it. Yes, online shopping had been increasing in popularity for years, but most people used it just occasionally and still did most of their shopping the old-fashioned way. Once stores began closing and imposing restrictions back in March, the shift to online commerce increased dramatically. As we've talked about many times on the show, in just the first month of the lockdown, the percentage of consumers shopping online for groceries actually tripled, while the percentage of those shopping for things other than groceries more than doubled. And this is according to a report by the consumer publication Payments. 3 months later, more and more data has emerged to show that this shift may be long-term or even permanent. One reason is that the longer Americans have remained in lockdown or partial lockdown, the more likely they are to have set up online platforms for shopping, dining, entertainment, and the more comfortable they've gotten using these. That comfort and convenience isn't something they're likely to just walk away from even after the health threat is fully contained and the economy is fully reopened. There are also other factors driving the shift toward e-commerce. One is psychology. Even after a COVID-19 vaccine is available, people who've lived through this crisis will always know if one virus can become a pandemic, so can another. Now, this isn't to say social distancing will remain a permanent choice for most people or that we'll never see crowded stores again. But analysts agree that the collective consumer mindset is likely to have changed in many ways as a result of this pandemic. And increased caution will be part of that change. Another factor is the e-commerce industry itself. Big online retailers who benefited most from the explosion of new customers are, not surprisingly, taking action steps to retain them with a variety of special sales and special promotions. Look for that trend to continue as the reopening expands and as competition from traditional stores increases. And finally, another big reason the shift is likely to remain permanent is that because the communications technology that makes it all possible is improving and becoming more widely available every day. Our guest today, FCC Commissioner Michael O'Reilly, will talk more about this coming up in a bit. But first, it's time to welcome my friend and co-host, Jeff Small, president of Arbor Financial Services, a retirement income store in Melbourne, Florida. Jeff's also the brand ambassador for the Retirement Income Store, as well as Amazon best-selling author of the book, Turning Financial Planning Right Side Up. So Jeff, I can't wait to hear about how your family's spending patterns have changed. I know for me, I don't see, the Whole Foods anymore or the Publix on the bill as much, but I do see Amazon on the credit card bill, maybe, 3-4 times, the packages at the front door. What kinds of changes have you seen in your own family spending habits?
Well, we're just shopping from home and we're saving a ton of money because we can't do the things that we were doing before. And so everything comes through Amazon, the groceries are being shipped, and we're not traveling as much, Dave. So, I mean, that's kind of the American way right now.
Yeah, no, it's a big difference. And if you travel, you travel by car because it's safer, right? You don't want to get on a crowded airplane sitting 2 inches away from somebody, so it's a real challenge. It's interesting. I've also seen, for me, and I think this is a trend overall, but I've seen that my credit card bills have actually gotten lower. It seems like every month we're spending a little bit less. You finding that also?
Oh yeah, that's a nice, refreshing bill to get now, isn't it? Doesn't that feel good? It's a lot lower.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's it's funny though, but I know we're talking to Michael O'Reilly in a little bit, and one of the things I want to talk to him about is what they're doing with 5G, because I find that, I don't know if you notice this or not, but for some very frustrating reason, sometimes, I have 5G near my area. So what I find happens is sometimes the internet, the Wi-Fi in my house, the router will just drop. I mean, I've gotten like an industrial grade router and still the Wi-Fi will just drop. I'm trying to make a purchase online. But it almost seems like with 5G, for some reason, even on my phone, if I'm trying to do this on my iPad, I shut off the Wi-Fi connection. I turn it off. And now all of a sudden the 5G lets the whole thing go through faster. So I don't know if you're seeing that or not, but if I want to ask them what's up with that, because if 5G is really going to be faster than my industrial size router and the internet at my house, then hey, we could save some money with the cable company, right?
Yeah, I mean, that brings up a really good point that you bring up the internet and the 5G. I mean, just imagine where we'd be today without having all of these connections through the internet, dealing with the corona and being able to order our goods and services. I mean, just imagine if we didn't have that right now. We were back in 1975, Dave, and we had to deal with this virus at the same time. People would truly be disconnected. At least we can connect with people and still run our businesses and still connect with our family, via the internet and the cellular world.
And the fact that you can actually see people, if you have people that you want to visit, but you can't, friends, family members, you can do the FaceTime. It's not quite as good as being there, but it's better than just a phone call, right? It's better than the old Ma Bell days. So that's good. And, you want to see a pretty cool movie and there was nothing on TV. And by the way, what is up with that? I don't know about you, but I have my stuff bundled to the cable company, right? So I've got I've got the cable TV, I've got the high-speed internet, supposedly high speed, but for some reason 5G tends to be faster. I've got the phone in there just for the security system. And between two homes, I'm spending about $700 a month. And still, I turn on the television and there's nothing to watch. What's up with that?
Well, that's been the trend. I mean, 5 million consumers a year, Dave, cut the cable. And because the cables treat the consumer like they're a utility, and they don't realize that they're not a necessary to have in somebody's life, like power or water or the electric. They're not necessary. And so, there's no reason to really have cable with smart TVs today. You can subscribe to Hulu or Amazon Prime. All of these TVs have smart boxes in them already, and there's free TV on there that you can get the same news, but there's nothing to watch anyway.
Yeah. In fact, it's funny. I just became signed on to Netflix really during this crisis. I've never done anything with Netflix because if you didn't see any you liked on TV, it was easy to get in your car and go to a movie theater, right? So now that we don't want to do that anymore, now we have Netflix. So it's just one of the things that's changing. You wonder what's really going to happen with some of the cable companies. 20 years from now, even 10 years or less, is it really going to be necessary for them to have a cable hardwired into your house? So that's one of the big things to ask Michael O'Reilly. I can't wait to ask the commissioner because it's really a change. And And that's why all the FANG stocks are doing so well, right? Netflix is going up because I'm not the only one that's doing more Netflix, right? Amazon's going up because we're not the only two that have Amazon packages showing up on our doorstep several times a week. Apple, right? If you're going to use the 5G more often, do things, you want a new device, right? So you're at home, you're Googling things, figuring out how to buy them. So and you have more time to do Facebook. So I guess it's no surprise that these FANG stocks are leading the stock market rally that we've seen, really, since the low at March 23rd, right?
Yeah, the tech stocks are really leading the charge right now. That's really what's carried the market so far. But what I want to ask Mr. O'Reilly, Commissioner O'Reilly, Dave, is I want to find out why there's such bias on the right side of the equation in the world of search engines. There's a huge bias there. Why the suppression of free speech is occurring in the tech world with companies like Facebook and Google and YouTube. Because there is a suppression there, and if people don't, and that's not conspiracy, Dave. That's really happening.
Yeah, no, and I know Zuckerberg's coming under some heat right now for all that stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what he has to say because, yeah, it's a question is, do you have free speech or do you have partially censored speech? And then, how far do you go before you get closer to China in the traditional sense than you do to the United States? But, we're seeing, and maybe we talk more about the resurgence of the virus now, right? We're seeing it here in Florida. Almost half the states in the country are seeing it. So it seems like those states that opened up a little earlier or maybe didn't close down fully are now starting to see this resurgence. And again, that's going to continue to help all those FANG stocks, I would think, because people are going to be home more because it's just too hard to go out and to do things. So I actually want to talk more about that, but we got to take a commercial break and come back. And then can't wait to talk with Commissioner O'Reilly. So you stay with us too. We have much more coming up here on the Income Generation in just a moment. We'll be right back. I'm David Scranton. As we reopen the economy, a renaissance has begun in the world of investing. If you or your advisor are not prepared for the new Corona economy, you could be left behind. You don't have to cross your fingers and toes hoping for growth in this unpredictable stock market. There is a more conservative way, and that is to invest for income without all the stock market risk.
Call the Retirement Income Store today at 888-888-4176 for your free retirement income kit. Call 888-888-4176 now.
For behind-the-scenes photos, retirement planning tips, and upcoming giveaways, follow the Income Generation Show on Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch video clips, guest interviews, and to catch up on past episodes.
According to research by communications giant Fleishman-Hillard, 90% of people surveyed say they anticipate enduring changes in their behaviors and in their expectations even after the pandemic ends. One of those changes is likely to be a permanent shift toward more digital consumerism. The same survey also found that consumers want to continue supporting smaller and local businesses in any way they can, even if it means paying a little bit more to do so. 71% of people surveyed say they'll find ways to continue to patronize local businesses that give them options such as delivery and pickup services or even online appointments. A smaller percentage also said they're willing to tip more and to pay even higher prices for the service or the benefit itself, at least in the short term, while many small businesses are struggling compared to large retailers. These findings underscore just how important it is for businesses large and small to adapt to these shifting consumer trends and to recognize that they're likely here to stay. The good news is that most businesses are adapting, and the government is taking unprecedented measures to help them weather this traditional period and prepare for the future. We've talked on past shows about the Federal Reserve's expansive efforts to keep credit flowing to companies large and small. Additionally, Congress has approved 2 massive coronavirus relief bills so far, with hundreds of billions of dollars earmarked specifically for small businesses. In just a moment, FCC Commissioner Michael O'Reilly will discuss some of the things his department is doing to ensure the nation's communications infrastructure is actually equipped to serve both businesses and consumers in this new connected corona economy. However, there's another emerging trend toward many consumers that may spell trouble for many businesses and the economy in general, regardless of the government's actions. Because consumers aren't just spending differently, they're reprioritizing. They're spending and spending less, according to several surveys. This is a trend that may very well continue long after the immediate health crisis of COVID-19 is passed. We'll talk more about that later on in the show. Now it's time to bring back my co-host, Jeff Small, along with our guest, FCC Commissioner Michael O'Reilly, who was confirmed unanimously for a seat on the commission back in 2013. Commissioner, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I know you're really, really good at what you do. Do you know how I know that?
No.
Because you're a Republican and somehow you get appointed during the Obama administration. So you were the token Republican to get appointed then. That means you must be really good at what you do.
Well, we have a unique structure by statute. The majority party gets 3 seats and the minority gets 2. So it's a kind of, I've always been a Republican, so option at the time.
Oh, I see. There you go. All right. Well, that makes sense then. That was my biggest burning question. Other than, how has your job changed over the last 4 months with more and more communication now being over the internet or social media? I mean, tell us kind of big picture how it's changed.
Well, look, the pandemic has changed everyone's experience. It's certainly changed my personal life. I'm in my home, actually, my dining room. I just put my daughter down and spending a ton of time on daycare instead of, farming it out to somebody else. So it's changed my personal life. But work-wise, the commission is still moving forward on its important mission, but the priorities have slightly, been highlighted. We recognize the importance of broadband long before we get into the pandemic, but those things are even more important now. Making sure that everyone has access is much more important and timely. And both on the business side and on the individual side. So our work is just as important as it's ever been, but we're just now scattered throughout the Washington, D.C. area.
But I mean, how has it changed in terms of, for example, the internet, the increased use of the internet, the increased marketing now, even myself, we used to do workshops for potential clients to educate them about financial matters, and we did it physically. And now we find ourselves doing it via the internet. So how's your role changed now with that part of the world changing?
Well, look, I'm doing, 5-6 meetings of virtual speaking events a week. I may have traveled the country in at least 3 times a month. Now I'm not doing any travel. And now I'm able to speak at conferences wherever they may be. And pipe myself into places around the world. So more active, more aggressive. The technology really improves the communication. I'm doing Zoom calls as everyone else is, a dozen times a day, depending on the.
But Commissioner, has that caused the FCC to look even more closely, more deeply at internet communications? Or not?
We are following very closely what's the traffic pattern, for instance, and where things have changed because of the pandemic. Has traffic, it's certainly migrated from the urban centers, and we're seeing the patterns more to suburbia and where people are in need more bandwidth and where they have higher needs for communication tools and technology. And so we're seeing that everywhere, and we're going to have to see if that's the new normal.
Mm-hmm. I want to hear a little bit about how these changes have affected the FCC in terms of and how they regulate, social media. But I need to leave that to Jeff because I know nothing about social media. So Jeff, help me out here.
So Commissioner O'Reilly, this is a very emotionally charged topic that I'm going to bring up to you, but the First Amendment allows social media companies to censor free speech, and the government or the FCC can't retaliate against that free speech, even though internet companies like YouTube or Facebook, they can actually curtail information that's out there that like maybe the president's putting out there. So can you explain to the general public and our viewer and our listenership why that is permissible and what that issue is?
Sure. Well, there's two parts. One is a statutory provision commonly known as Section 230 of the Communications Act, and that provides liability protections for the platforms you just spoke about in terms of how they deal with their users and the material that they may be posted and what their exposure point is for their moderation of traffic on their networks. The second is the underlying First Amendment. What protections do users have and the networks that they have? And Congress kind of short-circuited some of the court battles we'd have with the First Amendment by establishing this 230 protection. And that has generated considerable debate in Washington, D.C., whether the protections that we afford those platforms are too expansive. Are they abusing their privileges? Are they taking advantage of the legislation and the provisions for purposes of harming the speech of a number of actors, including conservatives who like to use their platforms? And that's something that the president has spoke about. A number of folks on Capitol Hill have talked about. And should the statute be changed? Or should it be left alone? And that's something that is under the purview that may come to the FCC, but it also is something that Congress is debating right now.
Technology companies trying to put a muzzle on conservatives? I can't imagine that would happen. That just doesn't sound right to me. We need to take a commercial break. We'll talk more about that, though, coming up in just a minute. And you stay with us. We'll be back here in a moment on the income generation. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm David Scranton. As we reopen America during these difficult times, we're all practicing social distancing. But at the Retirement Income Store, we're also practicing stock market distancing. You don't have to cross your fingers and toes hoping for growth in this unpredictable market. There is a more conservative way, and that's to invest for income without all the stock market risk.
Call the Retirement Income Store today at 888-888-4176 for your free retirement income kit. Call 888-888-4176 now.
Investing for income? The idea has grown in popularity over the last several years due to today's volatile stock market. But if you're at or near retirement age, it's no longer just how much you've saved. It's about maximizing and protecting your life savings while minimizing your risk from market ups and downs. David J. Scranton's new book, The Retirement Income Story, is here to help baby boomers face the challenges of investing in this age of economic uncertainty. Visit theretirementincomestory.com to learn more.
If you're near or in retirement, head over to theincomegeneration.com and download your special report written specifically for the needs of the income generation, again, those born before 1966. I'm David Scranton, and you've been watching The Income Generation. We'll see you all next Sunday. The cumulative economic toll of the coronavirus crisis is not yet known, and it may not be known for quite some time. The economy has been in a state of reopening now for over 2 months. The month of May even began with a very hopeful sign as retail sales rose by a record 18%, according to the Commerce Department. Of course, that was after sales had fallen by a record 16.4% in April. The point is, it's important to keep everything in perspective when talking about the recovery. While stores and businesses are opening again, many are doing so in a limited capacity. Ongoing spikes in COVID-19 cases around the country are a constant threat to the recovery, and another major outbreak would be a huge setback. Let's not forget also that the real unemployment rate, even after dropping slightly in May, is still almost 20%. That means there are more than twice as many Americans out of work now than there were at the height of the Great Recession. Given all this, it's not surprising that another major consumer trend emerging in many studies and surveys is less spending overall, be it online or in person. Because overall, consumers are dramatically reducing most discretionary spending, and this is according to a study by the Norton School of Family and Consumer Sciences. In addition, the study found that their spending priorities have shifted away from non-essential purposes toward staples, with many people who had never stockpiled any household items in the past now doing so. And that shouldn't be surprising either when you consider that it's almost an instinctive response during any crisis or period of uncertainty. When the future is very unclear, people become more cautious. They stockpile, they save, hoping for the best while preparing for the worst. Now, that goes not only for canned goods and toilet paper, of course, but for money also. In fact, that's one argument against the idea that the government's historic response to this crisis will help ensure a rapid recovery, as some analysts have predicted. As I've explained before, I believe the stimulus checks sent to most Americans as part of the CARES Act are more likely to be put towards savings or existing debts rather than going toward discretionary spending. Here's the bottom line. Just as the shift toward online consumerism is likely to continue long after the immediate health crisis ends, the trend toward less and more cautious spending may be long-term as well. Now, obviously, that would have incredible implications for the financial markets and possibly for your retirement plan, which Jeff and I will be talking about coming up in just a bit. Let's bring back my good friend and co-host, Jeff Small, along with our special guest, FCC Commissioner Michael O'Reilly. Commissioner, thanks for sticking around.
So go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just going to hand it to you. You're on a roll there with the social media, something of which I know nothing.
So, Commissioner Riley, what I want to know next really about is the dynamic between the FCC and the analytics and the metrics that the Googles of the world utilize to what I would call algorithmically manipulate search engine criteria to lean in a specific direction. Does the FCC have any oversight or provide any directive on those issues? And if they do, are we monitoring that right now? Because I see things on platforms, on international platforms, that I don't see on Americanized platforms. And it almost feels like somebody is massaging that information and what they want us to see. It's being pre-programmed.
Well, our role is somewhat limited here. We are exploring whether we have more of a say in the matter. It may be something that Congress gives us even more latitude to take action. But your point is well taken. I certainly get the same experience when I both domestically and internationally, and what I see on the platforms. It does, and I've certainly heard that from consistent voice. Certainly, many conservatives have raised that with me, that the experience and the manipulation from the algorithms are really problematic. It's something we need to explore, whether it's done by my agency or otherwise. It needs to be looked at.
No, I completely agree. Dave, what do you got?
Yeah, and if, of course, this is the FCC here in the United States, I guess if this were the FCC in China, you just have, your job would be easy. You'd have one rubber stamp and you just stamp everything and make it easy. But because we're that's right. And when it comes out of the government, your job is to stamp it and pass it on. So what is the one biggest change, maybe the one biggest thing that the FCC has now started to increase their focus on since this COVID-19 pandemic?
Look, it's two parts. It is having broadband to consumers, and then is making sure that our networks are reliable and able to handle the traffic patterns that we're dealing with. And I would say in a bigger perspective is how do we make sure the networks going forward, which are probably going to be a more wireless reliant, how do we make sure that those are built in a timely manner? How do we make sure we have the resources and the infrastructure to have those networks compete going forward? So it's all about taking this experience and making sure that it's replicated going forward, that it's not demurred going forward, that it's available to the fullest extent to the Americans.
So, Commissioner Riley, do we have a 5G schedule in place? And if we do you know what that is for implementation?
Sure. We don't exactly have a 5G schedule. What we have is, the government job is to create the environment, make sure that the companies are not hamstrung in their ability to make 5G available. And our wireless providers, commercial entities, are pushing forward on a very aggressive schedule to bring 5G throughout America. It's likely to hit the urban markets and already is. before it hits suburbia and then to rural America. But we are just as concerned about making sure that 5G hits rural America and is available as everywhere else. So it is not something lost on us. But in terms of a schedule, it's probably a 3 to 5 year build. Is what I've been looking at in terms of what we can expect. We have a number of resources, financial resources the FCC will put into the place to make sure this happens. But it's going to be really exciting when it does, because the opportunities available from 5G are really impressive. The use cases are really going to change the dynamics, the American experience.
Yeah, I actually can't wait for that because virtually everything I do is off my phone or my iPad, where literally, I mean, I could function completely with that almost, and that's going to make a big difference. So what do you see moving forward? Okay, if there's another area that potentially might come under the FCC's purview that maybe isn't now, or but's kind of sort of on the horizon, what might that be?
Yeah, we have a number of satellite companies that are setting up constellations, huge constellations to serve the entire globe and bring low cost broadband and other services to Americans and global users. And that is something that we're on the infancy of. But in the next 3 to 5 years, I think the timing's about right. We're going to see some really changes in terms of the cost of broadband and the availability, and solve those issues about rural connectivity. So I'm really excited on what satellite services may be able to develop. We've got a handful of plans. We'll see if any of them, which of those are successful and which ones of those fail by the market side.
Mm. So which one of you, are you going to be the first one to volunteer then to take a trip to that satellite vis-a-vis Elon Musk, or are you going to pass the buck to somebody else?
I'll pass the buck. I've seen those the launches myself, but they send them up. Elon sends them up at 60 at a time. He's getting ready to have his fleet ready by the end of the year is the goal, from my understanding. Yeah,
and even it's kind of funny because even though I'm a pilot, the thought about going up in a rocket ship is just a little bit past my comfort zone, I have to admit. So, Commissioner, it's been wonderful having you on the show today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so very much.
And you stay with us too. We have much more to come right here on The Income Generation in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Diane and her husband dreamed of spending their retirement traveling, but that changed when she became her mother's primary caregiver. Now her day starts before 6 a.m., helping Mom often late into the night. It's a stressful job, but Diane wants the best for her mom. Sound familiar? We thought so too. Caregiving can take a toll on your family, but the Retirement Income Store is here to help. Call 1-888-888-4176 to find out how the Retirement Income Store can help you achieve financial empowerment during retirement.
Visit theRetirementIncomeStore.com today to find out how you can rescue your retirement.
Welcome back to The Income Generation. I'm David Scranton. I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Jeff Small, founder of Arbor Financial Services, a retirement income store in Melbourne, Florida. So Jeff, I'm glad you asked him the social media question because, as I said, you know a lot more about that than me. What do you think about his answer in terms of how he responded to that with all this so-called censoring, and now that Zuckerberg's really coming under heat with all this?
Well, just so our viewership and our listenership knows, Dave, what the search engine companies and these big tech companies that control Google, Facebook, YouTube, even Amazon and Twitter, what they're doing is they're suppressing free speech, and they can do that under the First Amendment and then not be persecuted for it by the government. And to me, that seems like it's an abuse of free speech power. And so there's consistent left-leaning or left bias by those big tech companies. That needs to change. There's no regulation. But what I thought of his answer was it really was just textbook. He really didn't have a response for it. It was a textbook answer that just allowed it to allowed them to do that. So these big tech companies, Google, Facebook, Twitter, they can do whatever they want because there's no regulations in place other than Regulation 230, which is what he basically defined, which is where they are exonerating themselves from liability by doing this. It's a law. So it would take an act of Congress and a president's signature to change. But these companies have no regulation. That's why Google can suppress the word communism from their search engines in China, but they don't suppress it here. And this is very political. They've become political, Dave, and that's just wrong. When they become political, it's a mistake.
Yeah, no, that's right. And most of our viewers know most of the tech companies in California are left leaning. So as a result, it skews them in one direction. It's not even. And I tried to push them a little harder too with that 5G. I wish I had a more specific answer, but I'd really like to get that up and running for selfish reasons because I'd like to be able to save $700 a month on my cable bill between both homes. But I guess that's just my own selfish goal. It's interesting. We talked about how patterns have changed. This past weekend, I actually went to a grocery store for the first time. Because I was a bachelor here for the weekend. Teresa wasn't around, and I decided to go out to the store. Normally she gets online, she orders stuff from Amazon, whatever. I'm not one to do that, so I just get in the car, I drive to the store. And here in front of the grocery store and a couple other places, there's a 6'6", 300-pound security guard standing there, and of course they have a line, a queue, and they've got the spots, 6 feet apart. So it was really just, I understand why they have to do it, but it was just a really unpleasant experience. I'd gone to do a few errands and then finally decided that, it just wasn't worth it. I can't wait for Teresa to be back in town so she can do the ordering online and I don't have to do that anymore. And to make it worse, I went to get a new Bluetooth for my cell phone only to find the shelf completely empty as I was told that they're all made in China and they haven't seen a delivery in over 3 months. So what do you think about all that? I mean, that's kind of a little crazy.
A lot of industries have been impacted where business is not normal. Just tried to get some mountain bikes from a dealer here, and they told me that they're not manufacturing any because of the distance rules that these companies have to abide by, or they're kind of reformulating there's no manufacturing going on in the biking industry. So this is happening in many, many different industries where trends are going to change because people can't purchase things, so they got to look at other options to purchase things, and then industries are changing too to accommodate the virus as we go through this record-breaking surge in the virus, Dave.
Well, and what it's done for people who are in the stock market, and of course, most of our clients have most of their money in fixed income, that universe of bonds and bond-like instruments, and some in the stock market where once they've satisfied their income requirement. But what's interesting is we've gone from a market that for the last several years has been a market that's geared toward the benefits of index, S&P 500 index or exchange traded funds, now gone to a market of stock pickers. So in many ways, it's gone to more of in fact, I just saw an article that hedge fund business is now increasing because people are now looking for individual managers, whether it be hedge funds or folks like us, because it is a stock picker's market. It's not an indexer's market anymore, correct?
No, it is not. And we see rotations from tech to retail, from retail to tech, and it keeps going back and forth on a daily basis. But fundamentals, Dave, are the new fundamentals in the market did we get good virus news today on therapeutics? How many people ran through the TSA counter? What are restaurant reservations? This is stuff that doesn't make any sense. The market is divorced from economic reality right now.
Okay, well, I can't argue with that. We come back from the break. One of the things I want to make sure we talk about with our viewers and our listeners is also the market in general, with this more recent shutdown around half the country, or at least certainly a slowing down of our reopening, what that could do to the markets overall in this recent recovery we've had. So right after the break, we're going to come back. Jeff and I are going to cover that topic and a couple more just in the next few minutes. So you stay with us. We'll be right back here on The Income Generation. Welcome back to The Income Generation. I'm David Scranton, here with my good friend and co-host, Jeff Small. So Jeff, what do you think? Now that this reopening is slowing down a bit, the market seemed to have lost their upward steam they had at the beginning of June, steam that I think we both thought was a little irrational. Do you think things will just stay in this range a bit, or do you think maybe we could see another pullback from these levels?
Well, I think the market is waiting with bated breath on hospitalization rates and mortality rates to change, and then we'd see a massive sell-off in the markets as a result of this record-breaking expansion of the coronavirus. And so it's waiting with bated breath on economic numbers, and it's waiting on the performance or non-performance of the virus numbers. And so right now, we're at a peak. We're not going to go up any higher. There's not going to be a reason to sell off unless those two numbers change, either economically or with the virus, Dave.
Yeah. But also, if you think about it, with what the government's been willing to do between the Fed and Congress, it's likely that even if we do see an increase in infections or hospitalization rates, and all of a sudden that starts to pull the markets down, that all of a sudden, remember, just at the end of this month, the end of July, when all of a sudden things are going to change, that extra $600 a week for some unemployment folks is scheduled to go away. A lot of that stuff might just get extended, or they might increase other certain measures. In fact, there was something that came through the Senate so far this week, trying to extend some of those measures that may cause it to turn around if it does drop and go up. So it's almost like I think the Fed, Congress might keep some ammunition here in their pocket and not pull it out unless they need it. But if they do need it to support the markets, they might pull it out, and then who knows? Record highs again?
Just like Powell said yesterday, we can't buy ourselves out of this mess. We can't go, debt is not the solution for every little thing. It's more of a stopgap. The American consumer is dying to get back to some state of normalcy. They're dying at that, Dave, to be honest with you. People want to go back to traveling. They want to go back to vacationing. They want to go back to going to the stores and the malls and the shops. But what we really need now to get the economy I will. What we really need now is we need a national mask mandate so we can wear masks. Everybody wears a mask so we can get back to business, because we know masks prevent the spread and keep you from getting it. To what degree, who knows, but it helps. And so we need a national mask mandate to get us back to business again. That needs to happen.
I actually think that's a really good idea. I don't think this administration is going to do that. Right? If the president himself doesn't wear a mask when he's out and about, then it's a great idea. I guess we have to see if that happens. So, as usual, my friend, appreciate your insight. It's been very, very helpful. And you stay with us too. We have a little bit more coming up right here on The Income Generation. I'm Dave Scranton, and we'll be right back. I'd like to take an opportunity to thank our guest, FCC Commissioner Michael O'Reilly, and of course, my co-host, Jeff Small, for joining me today right here on The Income Generation. But most importantly, I want to thank you, our new and returning viewers. It seems nearly impossible to believe that for the first 2.5 months of 2020, we're all going about our lives normally. We're eating in restaurants, we're going to movies, going to concerts, basketball games, etc. Since early May, we've been struggling to get back to our normal routines. However, for many reasons, that's likely to be a very slow process. In many ways, our routines may be permanently changed, particularly when it comes to how and where we spend our money. The shift toward e-commerce had been underway for years, but it was turbocharged by this crisis. More importantly, evidence shows that this shift is likely to remain permanent to a large extent, even after the health crisis has passed. More and more businesses are recognizing that fact and making changes to remain competitive in this new corona economy. The government is also preparing, and the FCC is focused more than ever on making sure the technology is in place to meet the increasing need and demand from every corner of the country. However, in addition to taking steps to prepare for new opportunities, businesses and consumers are also preparing to meet new challenges. The full impact of this coronavirus crisis is not yet known and may not be known again for quite a while. As a result, Fiscal caution is also likely to remain a long-term trend for many consumers, with major implications for the economy and for the financial markets. As always, stay safe, and thanks for watching. If you're close to retirement, you really want to know how to protect and maximize your money. As you know, it's essential that you stay informed and up to date. And right here is where you can do it, of course, on the Income Generation. I'm David Scranton, and we'll see you next week.
For behind-the-scenes photos, retirement planning tips, and upcoming giveaways, follow the Income Generation show on Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch video clips, guest interviews, and to catch up on past episodes.
I'm David Scranton. As we reopen the economy, a renaissance has begun in the world of investing. If you or your advisor are not prepared for the new corona economy, you could be left behind. You don't have to cross your fingers and toes hoping for growth in this unpredictable stock market. There is a more conservative way, and that is to invest for income without all the stock market risk.
Call the Retirement Income Store today at 888-888-4176 for your free Retirement Income Kit. Call 888-888-4176 now.